Welcome back, and in today's lesson we're going to dive into an idea called parallel processing. We're going to be looking at how we could use this technique to enhance the sound of a rather basic and simple drum loop, and also uncover a Pandora's box of experiments and investigations you might do in your own time. So this is quite a classic technique in beefing up a drum loop, and sometimes this is also called New York compression. Anyway, I've got a beat here. And my job is to kind of spice this up a little bit. Let's assume that this is some kind of fixed media and I can't go into the different drum cells here and edit what they sound like. So this could be a sample or a MIDI drum loop like this. And yes, I'm going to use this technique to beef up this sound. I guess before we do that, we might say, why would we do this in parallel? I'll explain what parallel is in a minute. If I wanted to compress this drum loop and make it sound louder, I would use, of course, a compressor. And let's say I really wanted to push that. I wanted a very kind of modern, in-your-face sound for this loop. So I'm going to really overdo this compression. So it kind of sounds very lively and very in your face, which is what I wanted. However, the problem is I'm just going to record what we're hearing here. If I zoom in to the result, you'll see that these waveforms become square waves. They become flattened because I've compressed and then clipped the result so that our transients get flattened out. This can affect the perceived smack of the sound. This can make it quite challenging to mix with, and in some cases this can create some ugly distortions. So this isn't ideal. We've lost dynamics here. We don't have a kind of snappy, punchy sound, even though the overall vibe is really, really tasty, and it might be what I want. If I was to take off the compressor again, just for reference, so the original sound we can see still is nicely curved here with a bit of details, nice and dynamic signal, lots to work with. So we want the best of both worlds, and that's why we would employ parallel processing. Let's make a bus, or in Live it's called a return track. And I'm going to send this drum loop to that bus, that return track. And for now I'm going to solo it, so we can only hear this. Wonderful. Okay, we're going to go ahead and do the classic thing known as New York compression. I'm going to add two compressors and I'm going to add an EQ in the middle. The first one is going to be very extremely set. Just like the example from a second ago, we can really hear the pumping. In this case, my input isn't really real. My input isn't super loud. I might even add some gain going in. So we're beginning to really hear the tonal quality of this. So that's that out of the way. Next, I'm going to do the classic smiley face or hammock shaped EQ, which is literally carving out the mids. Now we get a sound a bit like this. We might want to move this around and find a sweet spot depending on the input signal. But my goal is to have loads of sub and loads of high end and not much else. I think I've achieved that here. Awesome. So finally, in this compressor, I'm going to set similar settings to the original one. Very fast attack, very fast release, high ratio. Maybe I won't go quite as wild with this. In this case, I'm achieving around 10 decibels of gain reduction. Okay, so this is a very basic parallel compression or New York compression chain. The trick to using this technique is then to unsolo this bus or this return track, turn the volume all the way down, and I'm going to start spamming the play button and just raise the volume until I can just about notice it alongside the original sound. I think about there. Cool. So I'll play the original bit again. And if I turn on the parallel compression, you really notice it's kind of thicker, chunkier, has a bit more weight and smack to it, but we haven't lost the dynamics. We're still hearing all the drum hits, the transients from this dry original track. And I'll turn it off again. So, you can really hear it on these toms. Of course, we're adding volume to this sound, so don't let your ears fool you with the perceived loudness, and listen more to the change in tone and the relationship between the drums. Cool, let's take this a little step further before we finish this short lesson. So I said that this is quite a basic chain. It does what we aim to do, but we can also be a bit creative here and add some tone and colour to the overall sound. The first thing I might do is add some kind of distortion or saturation. I could go into my effects here in Ableton Live and choose something. Maybe I would go for something along the lines of an amp simulator. But in this case, I thought I might go third party, and something I personally like to use a lot for this effect is Little Radiator from Soundtoys. This isn't free, but you can often find it very discounted on Black Friday sales or things like that. There are, of course, millions and millions of freebie saturation plugins out there. But yeah, my personal take is that this is a very nice effect for this purpose. Let's turn it off quickly. And in fact, I'll solo this. And I'll turn it on. It's just adding a bit of crunch. I might turn this heat, which is a drive amount, up a bit. That's a bit wild, so I'll turn the mix down. I can definitely hear in the low end, it's giving a bit of crunch. So yeah, I'd put some saturation. And again, you can use absolutely anything. I encourage you to experiment. Also, I might add a second EQ at the end and either boost or cut something. So in this case, I feel like the high end's a bit harsh. So I'm going to just back off on that. Also, I'd like to find something to boost, maybe some interesting part of the mix or a little sweet spot. So I'm going to scroll this around. I quite like it there. It adds this kind of tonal donk to the kick drum that I think might sound cool in the mix. Let's mix this back in again. As I'm sure you'll agree from listening to this, it really does add some dimension to a drum kit. And this will work with more or less anything. But yeah, have fun, practice this, and I'll see you next time.